This is Chaos Theory.
And Cosmic Chisme,
where we put the chaos into theory and spill the tea about the connections between us, nature, and everything in between.
So join us in unraveling the cosmic secrets and coincidences we just couldn't ignore.
H2, hello, Cosmic Chismosos. Welcome to Chaos Theory and Cosmic Chisme, where we are going to overanalyze everything that we find interesting between history, cultures, spirituality, nature, and so much more. I'm Kaylene.
I'm Ashley.
And today we are going to be talking about water. But before we get into it all, we want to talk about some current affairs that have been going on. You know, we always have to start an episode with a little bit of a current chit-chat, you know, a little cosmic chisme. And today we're recording, it is July 30th, 2025. And the first news that we got this morning was that an 8.8 earthquake had hit the shores of, where is it, Russia?
And that's big.
Yeah. I don't think we ever hear about natural disasters in Russia, really. There's too much other stuff going on. But with an earthquake usually comes something to do with the ocean. So there have been some tsunami warnings, right? So it's really affecting that side of the world where it's, you know, Russia, Asian countries, Asian islands and stuff, Hawaii, Japan.
And also California.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even hear that it got that far. So it's touching on everything in the Pacific. So we're just sending out thoughts and prayers and everything to everybody, hoping that everybody is safe. But recognizing also just the impact of, you know, that current affair and the topic in which we're going to be talking about today to some extent. Because we're just going to start talking about some of the elements and how big of an impact they all play in our natural life.
So those four elements: earth, fire, air, and water.
So today we're very excited to be talking about water. But before we get into anything from this episode specifically, we are not claiming to be scientists, and we're absolutely not claiming that everything being talked about in this episode is going to be scientifically proven. But just like we always mention, we're interested in everything. We want all the in-between. We want the science, we want the history, but we want what's that extra stuff? What are the things that we can't prove, you know? So we want to talk about topics that we find interesting and maybe see how many dots that we can connect on this beautiful earth that we live on.
So don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us at Chaos Theory, Cosmic Chisme on Instagram, and of course, Chaos Theory and Cosmic Chisme on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
So we've been talking about Earth, we've been talking about water. And what covers 71% of Earth's surface?
Water!
Perfect. And you're probably thinking, oh man, she's really gone off the deep end with this one. What is there to talk about? We drink it, bathe in it, poop in it. Ashley, what else do we do in water?
We wash dishes, and we swim in it.
Yeah, right you are. Well, it turns out there's a lot to discuss. If we were to just look past the physical aspects of water and everything that we know scientifically about it, we find that there's a complex spiritual and philosophical layer to this major element. And today we're going to talk about the emotional, spiritual, and even intelligent qualities of water. But first I want to share with you one of my favorite Pinterest quotes. The cure for anything is salt water, sweat, tears, or the sea.
Wow, that's really nice.
The internet says that quote is attributed to Isaac Denison, so we're just going to go with that. So earlier this year, I was listening to Theo Von's podcast featuring Cat Williams. Great episode, by the way. Cat has had a very influential year, revealing some hard truths and acting as somewhat of a prophet for controversial events that have come up to light in pop culture. But it's something else entirely that he said that I thought was really interesting about water. And rather than tell you myself, I'm just going to go ahead and play the clip for you.
Yeah, I pray underwater, like, because, you know, evil can't access you underwater, you know?
Oh, that's interesting.
A lot of people don't know.
Is that true?
Yeah. And
maybe that's why a child is an amniotic fluid, huh?
Yeah, like water's super powerful, like a living being. I'm sure that soon in the future they will confirm for us that water is a sentient being and that,
Man, that's gonna be if they do that.
well, that's why all throughout history there was always gods of water, just because it's such a powerful force. you
Yeah.
know?
Ashley, what did you think about that clip?
I've never heard of water being explained in that way.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I like it.
Yeah. So that got my wheels turning. What did he mean by water being a sentient being? That's weird, right? I've only known it to be one of the 4 major elements, like we talked about, a universal solvent and something to keep us hydrated. Keeping an open mind, though, I started my own deep dive after seeing a clip of the work of a crystallographer named Veda Austin. So when I did a little bit of research, I came across this podcast called Love Thyself. And this woman was on there talking about her crystal work. It is important to note that she is a New Zealander of Maori descent, which are the indigenous people of New Zealand, which are Polynesians. Yeah, a fellow island girl just like us. And we're going to see what we might have in common with her. So according to the internet definition, a crystallographer is a scientist who specializes in studying the structure of crystals and the arrangement of atoms within them, using various techniques, primarily X-ray diffraction, which I don't really understand, but I can explain how Veda Austin defines herself as a crystallographer.
Okay.
Because it seems as though her studying is more of, yes, the structure of atoms and crystals, but with how she'll like take a water sample and see how it's influenced by images, sounds, frequencies, music, by intention, influenced by light. So she goes over all of these different ways that she has affected water, and then she freezes the water, and then she sees how the structure of the water changes or how it reveals itself, essentially. But the reason why it's important to note that she is of Maori descent is because in that culture, water is personified. It carries the spirits of ancestors. And I find that so interesting, as we've already covered so much cultural significance of people of the islands and their relationships to the sea.
Okay, so even to this day, like even when we talked about in the very first episode, Polynesians, they love water. And so this carried on to today.
Yeah,
their descendants and their
so it's very culturally significant, like the role that water plays in their culture. The fact that we coined that they were the overseers of the ocean in the first episode because they worked with the stars and their own, understanding of the ocean, the relationship with the ocean, to navigate the seas, and how even to this day they're still doing that. We also talked about Puerto Rico, right? And how their resiliency comes from knowing that they have a complicated relationship to the ocean on top of, many other cultural influences and trauma that they've experienced, but through colonization and whatnot. But essentially, though, like they are so passionate about staying on the islands, despite the fact that every year it seems like some devastating hurricane comes through and can take everything from them. We talked a little bit, I think, about how like the superpower of the Philippines is the fact that they work really well together. They engage in good teamwork, which, oftentimes I'm assuming is to,
actually,
well,
in
go
fact,
ahead.
Funny story.
Yeah, please.
They have it's hurricane season right now. It's always raining. I've been there during this time and it is just constant. But there was one video that we saw, after a big flood. So they were filming the Filipinos and they're just like, hi, waving. And they're like, hey, we're on TV. And they're like waist deep in water. And they're just like, we're on TV. And they're just like, this is every summer, guys. It never fails. So I thought that was interesting because I was like, you're like in water. Like all your things are in water. And you're just like, they're like, no, we got it.
Right.
Bounce
Like,
back.
wait till this settles down. We'll just rebuild. No biggie. We'll sing a song. We'll break out the karaoke machine. It'll all be good. It'll all be good. So like we've talked about, I mean, we have talked so much about different cultures, different relationships to the water, to the ocean and everything. So Veda is very much a part of this world. Like her culture also very much embedded with respect for the water and all that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But specifically, I wanted to share her experience with how water can have memory, how water can be sentient, and how it can also be spiritual. So Veda Austin wrote a book called The Living Language of Water, where she documents only a fraction of the tens of thousands of experiments that she's conducted of influencing water in a petri dish by either talking to it, showing it pictures, playing music, and exposing it to just different influences. And then seeing how that water reflects back what she exposes it to once she freezes it. Does that make sense? Like,
she takes a petri dish. And so she shows them pictures.
Yeah, so she'll put the water in the petri dish. She'll take the petri dish and she'll like place it over top of an image, or she'll like talk into the petri dish.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so when she does that, she freezes it.
Yes. And I don't know if she has a special technique. I tried to look into it, but I couldn't really find her really explaining the freezing process. So she might have a specific process of how she freezes it. If it's like a slow freezing, rapid freezing, I don't know. But she's been doing this for 10 years, like 10 plus years. And
this isn't like an overnight.
No, she mentioned in the podcast that she had done this like over 64,000 times. And each time she says she learned something new about how water responds. And she basically just documents all of the consistencies and the way that she can sort of define how water is responding to her. So in one instance, she showed the petri dish of water, the number 4. And then upon freezing it, she saw that the structures, and this is where her crystallography comes in, the structure of the water shaped itself into the number 4, like exactly. But then there are some other situations where the water didn't respond as straightforward as just reflecting what it was exposed to.
But it was still responding.
Exactly. And so one of the more interesting testimonies that she gave was that she had spoken into the petri dish the word Yeshua, and in response, it showed the Hebrew symbol for Yeshua when it was frozen. So there's like, to her, in her interpretation, she's almost like having this call and response relationship to the water, rather than being like, oh, you do what I tell you to do, and interpreting what those things mean. And so she showed a picture of, I think it was like a picture of a woman, and the ice formulated the profile of this woman's face. And then she waited like 3 days, and then she froze the water again, like the same water, froze it again, showed the woman's face. Then she waited like 7 days, and then the water froze again and had shown the face again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it remembered that face even after.
Yes. So it remembers its influence, holds those like structures in it, even in liquid form. So that just kind of made me think, like, in such a small sample, like, what are our oceans, rivers, lakes, and so on responding to? Like, what do they hold on to? Like, do they hold memories, you know? And I think it's interesting, too, that if somehow the water is holding the story of our history, the fact that it can hear Yeshua being told to it and then responding with Hebrew, is it holding a memory of a time in history where it knew the sacredness of what that meant? Or is this random? Is she drawing her own conclusions? Who knows, plus, how does water even know any of this? Like, the history of just like, water has been recycled through so many different, thousands of millions of years of being on this earth, it's seen everything. I mean, I remember learning in school that like it's like the same water that George Washington drank.
That's right. Yeah, the rainwater. Like, yep, this is it. You know, to go like that's. I mean, to think about that, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, and we even just learning like the water cycle, the fact that it just. It's always returning back to us. It's leaving and return, to leave and return. That was like her way of saying that water holds some sort of memory. And I also wonder too, like, we're not going to get into this today, but I think about like haunted bodies of water as well. Like, I wonder, like there's,
like that has to do with the memory, whatever this memory power that water has.
Yeah. I want to get back to the quote at the top of the episode about how the cure for anything is salt water, tears, sweat, and the sea. Water may not be completely sentient, but water sure is in lockstep with our own.
Sentient,
means sentient means that it can have feelings. So the claim is that the water can hold emotions and hold emotional responses. And when Veda did her work, like she was exposing it to all these different influences, she claims that the water could respond to her in a way that was emotional rather than just...
So it's not just a memory.
Right.
It's emotions.
Yes. But Veda wasn't the only one who did this. There was also a researcher, his name was Dr. Masuro Emoto, who popularized the idea that water responds to human emotions and intentions.
The Japanese are getting in on this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's this reoccurring theme. People who have relationship with the water, like island people and everything, definitely see it as more than just a resource.
Okay.
So he claims that water exposed to kind words or music formed beautiful symmetrical crystals. So he used a similar method as Veda.
Crystallography.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And he also claimed that water exposed to anger or hatred formed distorted, chaotic patterns.
Okay.
You're right.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the reaction was good when, the exposure was good and then bad.
So like good vibes equal good images.
Okay.
Bad vibes, bad images. But that's also up for interpretation. Like how do you prove that something is, responding in a more beautiful way? Because beauty is subjective, right?
Yes.
And then, how do you show that it's chaotic and, all these things? Because, I mean, I guess he was saying that the patterns of the crystals formed more symmetrically.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. Rather than like with the anger or hatred formed distorted, chaotic patterns. So kind of bouncing back to the memory thing, Emoto's methods lacked scientific rigor. They sparked global curiosity about water's memory and sensitivity. So one of the quotes that I wanted to mention from his book, The Hidden Messages in Water, is, "To give your positive or negative attention to something is a way of giving energy. The most damaging form of behavior is withholding your attention." So I think this is interesting because this isn't necessarily just like some science experiment to see how water can hold on to memory or this and that. It's also a metaphor to the energy that we give things emotionally, because all of this ties in. Our emotions are water. Our bodies are made up mostly of water. In fact, Veda Austin claimed that molecularly, our body is made up of like 90% water, as opposed to the scientific 61%. But her idea is that, by volume, we're 60% water. But if we were to break down like all of the molecules in our body, like it's much more than that. And that's, also sparked all of the conversations, even ones that we've had on the podcast, about how the moon affects our mood, like full moon or whatever. Oh, yeah. And that, of course, like it pulls on us, whatever. But there's a lot of conflicting science around that. Like, how do you study that,
Yeah.
And science or just our own observations, like, do all of our experiences have to be validated by science, is also like a thought.
That's true. An emotion, I guess, like sentiency.
Yeah.
Is really hard to mix in with science. Too.
Yeah. Yeah. So to, kind of go back to Masaru Emoto's quote about giving your positive or negative attention to something, it makes you think about how we interact with each other. Because if we are majority water, right? How do we respond to each other? How do we respond to ourselves? If we talk negatively to ourselves, if we treat ourselves negatively, then we're going to have a negative impact. Then that affects the majority of the molecular structure of our bodies. Yeah. Whereas, and the same when we talk to other people, when we talk to others and we're negative and we respond with ill intentions and stuff, it shows also how we can affect other people. That's just a thought, And Veda said something interesting in that podcast episode where she explains that our waters can connect with each other. They can communicate with each other, or they can at least recognize each other. Mm-hmm. And if we're carrying water in us that has been on this earth for millions and millions of years, and we're carrying it through, cycling it through, returning it back to us, I wonder if our waters do recognize itself in each other. And it makes sense to this idea of, like, you and I, where our friendship, so many times we've texted each other at the exact same time. So many times we've said the exact same thing, or we'll say something, they're like, oh, I was thinking that. We also have been able to anticipate each other's needs or wants. So is that just years of understanding the patterns within each other? Is it our waters?
Oh my gosh, that gives me so much to think about.
I know. And then it makes, I don't know, it's just fun. It's fun to think about, because if this were true, then that means that the water that we consume can also carry so much more than just hydration. What if we are exposing ourselves to memory and frequency and emotions that are in the water? If we consider, this is another quote from Masaru. He says, if we consider that the human body is a universe within itself, it is only natural to conclude that we carry within us all the elements.
Wow. That's
exactly
crazy. That goes into so much.
Yes. Which is, again, what we're going to explore in this podcast. We're just starting with water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there is something to be said that even if the science doesn't necessarily back up that water itself is sentient, we can't deny that water carries our sentience. So tears, whenever we cry or whenever we're joyful, our emotions are seen through tears. And Veda Austin also spoke about the molecular structure of our tears. And whether it's tears of joy, whether it's tears of sadness, whether it's a response to cutting onions, literally, our tears hold different structures. And of course, they carry different chemicals as well. And scientifically, tears are just more of a chemical buildup in our brain that needs to release. Okay. So that's, going back to that quote too about, the cure for everything is salt water. So, you have overwhelmed emotions that water needs to release as tears. If you have an overall buildup of, like toxins and things, your body will sweat it out, you know?
Yeah.
So there is something to be said about that. But what I found also intriguing about this conversation with Veda, and as she has a much deeper relationship to water than maybe we have, she says that she's learned a lot about herself in the process of doing this experiment. So even if this experiment doesn't necessarily prove in a scientific way, it truly does mean something to her. And I think that's important to look at.
Yeah, that's really nice, because it did something for her, regardless of whether it proved her point or not.
Exactly. So something that she says in her interview is that water has taught her to be transparent, to flow, not force, to become non-judgmental, to forgive. Water serves as a mirror, is in your reflection. You can see your reflection in a still body water, but water is also reflecting what you're feeling through tears. And Bruce Lee, of course, there's like that famous Bruce Lee quote, be like water, and that's also something interesting to think about. But to touch back on to how Veda had learned from this experiment, that there was in one experiment that she did where she explains how she was trying to get the water to respond and reflect to flowers. Like she was showing it flowers all day, trying to get it to respond by reflecting back, like in her, as she froze it. She wanted the water to show flowers. But instead, it showed her sad faces. Like all day, it was showing her sad, sad, sad. Then she later reveals that in that moment that it was responding to her emotional state because she was in a really dark place during the time that she was freezing this water and trying to get it to do what it, trying to control it essentially. But then she realized that after, getting that response of sad faces back, that the water was responding to her and reflecting back herself.
That's crazy.
Yes. So this is that argument of just, like something that may not be scientific because it is more spiritual, more metaphorical, means more. It's not about controlling water. Because that's the other thing too, is that science is somewhat trying to just find the black and white responses to things. But if we look at water in a more spiritual way, it's just like if you have a belief in a higher power, like you don't just wish upon God like in a way that's like a fairy godmother. You don't just say, "Oh, make me into a princess for the night." You ask God to show you what you need to know. And in that way, I think it is revealed to her and it is confirmed for her and validates that it was showing something that she needed to see.
Yeah.
And it took that water showing her the sad faces over and over and over again, right? So going into some more spirituality with the water that I found interesting, because Cat Williams said in that clip that I played, he says he prays underwater. And that I thought was interesting. He says like evil can't reach him underwater. The word water actually appears approximately 722 times in the Bible, which is more than faith, love, and worship.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yep. The shortest sentence in the Bible being Jesus wept, which tears, right? So I looked a little deeper and I found that in the Torah, it's mentioned 300 times and it's mentioned 63 times in the Quran. According to these religious texts, as well as many others, water is regarded as the birthplace of all living things, and that is accepted in science today as well. Think about it. In our search for another planet to inhabit, what is the number one factor we're all looking for? Water. Exactly. Does the planet contain water? Because water is life. And think about also our amniotic fluid. We start...
Her water broke.
Yes! We are all in water. We're up here in water.
Oh my goodness.
So when we are talking about the spiritual significance, there's no doubt that water is the main character. So Veda actually reminds us in her interview on the Love Thyself podcast that I keep referencing, that water was once referred to as the waters, only now to be reduced down to just water. The waters were the source of baptism, rebirth, and birth, like we mentioned. The water of the womb, like we mentioned. Theo Vaughn mentions in the clip that we share that we come from water in many different layers. So water was referred to in a spiritual context as a way to punish or rebirth us as people from Noah or Gilgamesh. A great flood is referenced as the way to wipe everything clean and start again. So from everywhere, from being birthed to reborn and baptism to starting over again with a great flood, water is the source of life and death and rebirth, right?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome because it's like washing it clean.
And in many traditional cultures, including Thai, Polynesians, First Nations, and Andean, water is seen as alive and conscious. It's not just a resource. It's a relative, an ancestor, or a deity. Think Disney's Moana, like we referred to in our first episode, right? Her grandmother and all the things. And she had a real relationship with the way that water interacted with her. Thai animism and Hindu Buddhism syncretism revere Nagas, which are the serpent spirits of water, as wise, watchful guardians of rivers and rain. They're thought to communicate warnings or blessings. And of course, we've heard of Poseidon, Aquaman.
Hey.
But Poseidon, who's another water god?
Triton?
Trident. There you go. King Trident, the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, Ariel's dad.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always been some god of water in something, some type of religion.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yes. In Hawaiian culture, water is called wei. So it's the word for wealth. So having a lot of water is wealthy.
Okay, so no matter where you turn, water is somewhere appreciated or like...
Right. Think about it. Even in survival, like if you are in a situation in survival, you can survive 3 days without water. And Everything else you can go much longer without. You can go long without food. Even in basic survival guides, they say 3 hours without shelter, but 3 days without water, and then you can go 3 weeks without food. So you can, water is so essential, obviously. So if you have it, then you feel at least a little bit better. If you knew that you were near a source of water, you're going to be okay. And in Hawaiian culture, too, they say water has mana, which is spiritual power, which is, again, what we've been talking about. So in Maori culture, they recognize water as toonga, which is treasure, and wahitapu, which is a sacred place for the region's indigenous people, and they value to the whole country. It's also significant that water has different names. Forgive me for this one. I didn't practice some of these words, but Waiora is the sacred water that falls as rain or comes from a spring. Only this type of water is suitable for ritual ceremonies, so birth and death. River water is usually considered as Waimaori, which is safe and healthy for drinking and catching fish. And wastewater becomes Waikino, even Waimate, when it's too dangerous to drink.
Okay, so there's different levels of, this is pure water.
Yes.
And only for religious reasons.
Yes.
And then river water, you can drink it, do whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's the wastewater, which is like dirty and gross. Don't use it.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Nuclear power plant water,
Okay.
Even Veda talks about this in her crystallography. She talks about how spring water, river water, rainwater, wastewater, bottled water, all these different waters structurally manifest itself differently. So she'll freeze them, and there's a little bit more chaos in other waters and a little bit more symmetry in like spring waters and things like that. But what I think is interesting specifically about New Zealand is how serious they take this. So there's this thing called Te Mana o Te Wai, which is a concept central to New Zealand's freshwater management policy, emphasizing the fundamental importance of a water's health and well-being. It recognizes that protecting the health of freshwater ecosystems is essential for the overall health and well-being of the environment and communities.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so this concept prioritizes the health of water bodies, ensuring their ability to sustain life before considering other uses. And even environmentalists and spiritual thinkers are reframing water as being with rights, not just a resource. So in 2017, New Zealand granted legal personhood to the Wanganui River, recognizing it as a living entity with guardians.
Wow. So it has its own rights.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And that's the power of, when you get together and you are relentless about making your statement and showing the importance of these resources, that is so powerful that they were even able to influence the legal system to protect something like this in such a context that still, like we've mentioned, can't be really proved by science, but just understanding that this is important to us as a people.
Right.
So once again, the Polynesians coming through as protectors of the ocean and the water. Some of the science of everything that we've talked about, I want to reiterate that this isn't supported by mainstream science at all, but because ultimately water doesn't have a brain or nervous system or any other physical structures to support sentience. But in these experiments, there is a lot of confirmation bias, and findings are hard to replicate consistently. However, maybe it doesn't have to be supported by science to really hold significance. Maybe it's just metaphors and philosophies. Maybe that's just what we need to survive and to find purpose. And maybe that motivates us to care more for our waters. If we can connect them beyond just molecules and they have a spiritual and emotional significance to us, even if it's just the gentle sound of rain, watching the soothing rush of a babbling brook smoothing over stones for hundreds of years, or maybe just stepping under a waterfall, letting its renewing energy wash over you, like Mother Earth's baptism, is how we draw into nature and continue to preserve and protect it. And maybe the therapy water provides is sentience enough.
Why is the sound of the ocean so relaxing? Like, I listen to those ambient videos to fall asleep to, you know, like rain, thunderstorm, like a river. Why does all that feel nice to listen to?
Right.
like ocean waves that are rough.
Right.
You know, it can be gentle or not.
Yeah.
But still.
Brings you a place of peace,
Exactly.
you know? And I feel the same way. Like whenever I get a chance, I love to go hiking in our national park, and there's a specific waterfall that I love to go to. And it feels like a time to reflect, to be in the moment, and to also just, you feel like you're taken care of for whatever reason. It feels safe. But just like in every episode, we're going to talk about what zodiac sign is water.
Take it away, Kaylene.
So, if you don't know, here's kind of the breakdown. There are 3 zodiac signs that represent water in the zodiac wheel. Water is the element of emotion, and the 3 zodiac signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, are the water signs. And I find that each one of them actually represents a different quality of the intelligence and the sentience of water that we discussed. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about just like what is actually in the books before I get into my theories. So Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are associated with deep emotions, intuition, and sensitivity. So we've talked about sentience, intuition, meaning transparency, reflecting back, and sensitivity. They are known for their strong connection to their inner world and the feelings of others, often navigating life through their emotions and instincts. So before I dive deeper into each sign, I think it's important to know that I'm going to mention cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. Cardinal signs are the initiators, fixed signs are stabilizers, and mutable signs are adapters. I could spend all day talking about this stuff, but we're just gonna leave you with that basic information for now. So let's go over the dates for Cancer. So Cancer is June 21st through July 22nd. It's a cardinal water sign, so cardinal being initiators. Cancer is known for being nurturing, protective, and deeply empathetic. They are often family-oriented and value emotional security and comfort. Cancers are deeply connected to their emotions and tend to be sentimental and intuitive.
So sentimental.
Yes, exactly.
Sentient.
Yes, you get it. You're already way ahead. So each of these signs represent a different body of water as well. I follow this particular astrologer on TikTok. His handle is the Royal Cusp. So he describes Cancers as representing the shore. So ruled by the moon, Cancer represents cycles of emotions. Their home body is self-protected. They're like a crab, hard on the outside, soft on the inside, and running to and from the ocean, standing at the ground between spiritual and physical, coming and going. They're creative spirits. And yeah, just like we mentioned, or you mentioned, they're sentient, So where the emotion meets the world, that is where Cancer stands, is where the emotion meets the world. And being ruled by the moon, they're connected to the tides and cycles. So Cancers are more emotionally reactive, responsive, and protective. It feels first, and then it tries to make meaning. Scorpio is October 23rd through November 21st. They are fixed water signs. So again, fixed being the stabilizers. And they're often mysterious and possess a strong will and determination. Scorpios are deeply emotional and can be fiercely loyal to those they care about. As far as how they represent the water elements, they are still water. So pond, swamp, lagoons, they draw life in. They represent the peace of a pond under a full moon or the danger of a lurking alligator under the swamp.
Okay.
Yeah. So their power is emotion. They are also life-giving. So they are ruled by the genitalia as far as like the body part that they like are most connected to. They're the most like sensual and sexual of the signs, to be honest. Sorry for those with children who are listening. Think of it as like life-giving, like a pond where frogs lay their eggs and sprout tadpoles, and then they can grow in that small ecosystem, right? But a toxic Scorpio is going to be more like poison, toxic chemicals, venom. So still water, fixed emotion. They are the photographers of the zodiac in that sense. So going back to how we connect that to this whole episode is, they hold memory. But they also reflect back to what you're truly feeling and seeing, right? So what do you think about that? About the fact that they are like similar to thinking about Scorpio as like in these experiments where Veda Austin explains how water can show her something that she was feeling, right?
They're extreme.
Yeah, nothing gets by on a Scorpio. Let me just say that. So like they're always looking, they're always observing, they're always logging information away. But they're also very resourceful and they build ecosystems for life to be, to give. So that's like the water aspect of them, right?
Okay.
And so the fact that they are described as like the photographer really made me think about how this water was being urged to be almost like a photographer to what she was trying to influence.
And this is when, like, okay, so during her dark time, when she was experiencing, it was reflecting her emotions.
Yes, rather than the subject that she was forcing it. And
do we know her birthday?
That's a good question. I'm gonna look that up. But I want to say this too, like anybody that has a Scorpio in your life, I mean, I was raised by one and I've been in a long-term relationship with one and I've had many others come through my life. Whew, not for the weak. But I will say this, that they are the most authentic and they don't let you be anything but transparent and authentic back. So just like Veda trying to influence the water in that experiment, it was being like, let's be real. You're sad. And that's what we're going to talk about.
So I looked up Veda's birthday and it looks like July 11th.
Oh, really? So then that puts her as a Cancer. Interesting. This water, she's the water sign and she loves the water. And Cancers they are beach girls. Even if you're a guy Cancer, you love the beach. I'm just naming that now. Okay. Come for me. If you're a Cancer and you hate the water, show up in the comments and tell me it's wrong. Okay, but if you're a Cancer and you love the beach and you love mermaids, if you have Cancer in your top 3 and you're a big mermaid girl, tell us. Tell us in the comments. We want to hear from you. Okay, the final water sign, Pisces, the oldest of the zodiac wheel. Their birthday is February 19th through March 20th. They are a mutable water sign. So what does mutable mean? Mutables are the adapters. So a mutable water sign, Pisces is known for being dreamy, compassionate, and highly intuitive. They are often artistic and spiritual with a strong connection to their imagination and emotions. Pisceans are known for their empathy and ability to adapt to different situations. So in regards to the body of water that Pisces represents, it's going to be the deep ocean. So vast, infinite potential, deep, navigating deep emotions, the spirit realm, psychic, and they represent the spirituality of this water. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune, planet of the dreams, illusions, mysticism, and the collective unconscious. They are associated with compassion, sacrifice, and martyrdom, much like the story of Jesus, forgiveness, faith, imagination, and oneness, all deeply spiritual concepts. Pisces energy dissolves boundaries between self and the other, body and soul, reality and dream, and that's what makes it feel so mystical. In many traditions, spiritual awakenings happen through surrender, tears, prayer, fasting, and visions, all of which align with Piscean archetypes. Pisces also governs altered states, so dreaming, trance, meditation, psychedelics, and deep prayer. It's a water portal.
Whoa.
Yes. Tushibalba. So I think it's pretty fair to say that like the deep ocean is like the deepest and the darkest it's going to get. So they can handle all of like the deepest, darkest parts of the human experience, which is often times the place when we need religion the most, you know, and we lean in to spirituality, religion and stuff during their darkest times, you know?
Yeah.
And also, you know, just like what everything we've talked about, like the rebirth and all that stuff. So you might be able to find yourself a Pisces during a time of rebirth. And I will say too, like I've had a Pisces, shout out to Elisha. Hey, I've had a Pisces come into my life during a time of rebirth for me, you know?
Wow.
And during that time, like, it was like walking with someone spiritual during a dark time and knowing that that person is going to show up and be ready for whatever state that you're in. So, you know, so find yourself a Pisces or let a Pisces come to you, you know, and they're going to be your best friend and they're going to be so willing to just show up for you in whatever state that you're bringing. So, you know, they can handle that darkness as well. So in conclusion, science may not call water sentient, but it certainly calls it mysterious. And across cultures, water has always been treated with reverence, not because it thinks, but because it responds, because it moves, because it remembers where we've been and maybe where we're headed. And just like the waters keep talking, keep gossiping!